Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Godzilla podcast. I am Joe.
I'm Drew.
And today we are going to be doing a commentary / podcast on Destroy All Monsters.
There's been so much leading up to this, Joe.
So many like little monster movies that we didn't even know about.
So many films that all built up to this due to the fact that there was a monster here, there was a monster there. In this film, we had covered one of them without even knowing it by doing King Kong Escapes, and this is the culmination of our hard work in viewing films. You know,
Worth it?
Nah. You know, the final battle though.
Yeah, the final battle is pretty sweet, considering it's like 4 minutes of a 81-minute film.
We're going to talk about a different cut of it where they cut out about 14 minutes. Hopefully not a single second of which was the battle.
So if you've never been on the podcast before for some reason, it is a commentary / podcast. We will be pressing play on the movie when we tell you, and you can watch the movie along with us talking over it if you so desire. Otherwise, you can just listen like a normal podcast. That's totally cool.
Yeah, we're 20 plus episodes into this point, so I hope that our regular listening audience has gotten that by now. But just in case you're a newcomer, welcome, and that's how we do it.
So this version of Destroy All Monsters, or as it's called, Charge of the Monsters, is the Tokyo Shock Blu-ray.
Yeah,
fancy, man.
Tokyo Shock being a subsidiary of Media Blasters. We are so happy to finally be on the right, have a fully 100% legit copy. This
bought it off of Amazon.
Yeah, and this Tokyo Shock DVD wasn't a like disgusting amount of money. Wasn't it like $20-ish, 25?
Yeah, I mean it was like kind of a full price Blu-ray, but it was fine. Yeah, it was like $3 more than buying the DVD, and I was like, I could watch a Blu-ray right now.
And this has got to be the 2014 re-release of this film by Tokyo Shock. So just quickly before we start the film, there was a 2011 release of this same film on DVD and Blu-ray by Tokyo Shock. Okay, that version had 3 different audio tracks with it. It had the original. So backstory just a little bit here. There is obviously the audio track in Japanese released to Japanese theaters. Then there was the international English dub. And when it was brought over to America, the AIP who released it here, they found it not suited. They didn't find it to be that good. So they had Titan Sounds, which was formerly Titra Sounds, do their own dub. They did the dub for Atragon, and that's a fan favorite dub. So I guess people really like Titan subs. Or dubs. But then anyway, the 2011 Tokyo Shock release, DVD and Blu-ray release of this included all 3. It included the Titan audio, English audio, the Toho International English dub, and the Japanese. Okay. It had to be re-released in 2014 by Tokyo Shock simply due to the fact that Toho would not allow them to have that Titan audio on there. Same with Atragon. When we viewed Atragon, it only had one English, which is the Toho International English dub, and the Japanese. Toho forced them to take it off the market and re-release it. It's to date, it is the only Godzilla, at least Showa era, but I believe Godzilla film period, that has 3 audio tracks, 2 English and 1 Japanese. So yeah, they really, really would not allow them to put the that same Titra dub on Atragon. So Toho is, they're very tight-fisted with what they're going to release over here.
Yeah, which is odd.
So yeah, we have the less expensive version.
Made some of these movies,
but I'm so glad to have one legally and on Blu-ray. So
yes.
About $20-25 you can get that on Amazon.
Yeah, for now anyway.
Yeah,
before it goes
until
out
it goes
once again. The cover art also is pretty awesome. They did their own custom cover art. It looks legit.
So many of these posters, worldwide posters for Destroy All Monsters. So cool because they have so many monsters on them.
All right, man. So I guess it's time to get started, man.
Let's get into this.
I'm hovering over the play button. I'm going to press it in 3, 2, 1.
Not many special features on this Blu-ray, though, honestly.
No.
Like, none other than the films.
No, it's not like the Studio Canal stuff, which always had a lot of things.
Classic media.
The great thing, though, when you watch an old movie on Blu-ray is that you're reminded that there's some good quality in this. It doesn't.
Oh yeah,
it doesn't always look terrible.
Quality
like
production for sure. I did never
Blu-rays
find out,
whatever.
Joe, whether this title screen is new or whether it was from the original '68 release.
Which would, yeah, it looks like it's CGI, and so I would say that it's probably like put in there.
All right.
Separately, but then again, maybe not. Maybe it's some sort of optical effect that I don't know about as far as the titles are concerned. If you're not watching the movie, the Destroy All Monsters title card, the
kanji
comes up in 3D.
Yeah, it lifts itself up. First
And
we see
then-
it flat, and then it lifts up and it's all sparkly.
Yeah, so I mean, it could be an optical effect. It very much could be, but I believe it's probably a post, put in for a DVD release at some point.
And we're immediately
and
released.
that's the version we have.
We're immediately shown in this film Moonlight SY3. What do you think of this spaceship / everything? It's an all-around, all-terrain vehicle.
Yeah, so it's basically Atragon 2.0, as we talked about when we first watched the movie.
Yeah, but what's your opinion on it? I think it's quite dull, honestly. It
wiggles a lot when it flies up in the air.
It's a cool prop that it's constantly spurting out blue flame from the back. They show that effect a lot, and that's quite cool for a prop.
Yeah. What do you think about these? Well, let's talk about the plane real quick.
Okay, Moonlight SY3.
The Moonlight SY3.
I think because this movie
is 1999, right? This is when this movie takes place. It said late 90s in our subtitles, but when I was reading up on it, it said 1999.
English dub says 1999. The Japanese says at the end of the 20th century. So they don't specify.
It's somewhere in there. Either way, apparently we have these free shuttles back and forth from the moon.
Yeah.
For what reason, I am not sure.
I know. Even at the end of the film, you're not sure. Scientific endeavors, we believe, but it never comes out and says.
Nope. It doesn't say anything.
I don't know who these main characters really are, what their purpose is. I don't know. It's the end of the 20th century, so apparently we have all these military, scientific groups. These guys have guns, but they seem kind of like scientists. They're like space police-ish of the Earth.
Well, it turns out you do need space police because of the
because of all the alien invasions,
or whatever they're called.
Yeah.
Then we get this opening title sequence, which is very unusual.
It's the most out there of them we've seen so far in the Showa era.
So it almost looks like they're taking these cardboard cutouts, and obviously they're not actual cardboard, but it looks like cardboard cutouts being put on top of moving images.
Yeah, it's a very strange overlay
of the spaceship going up to the moon.
And I really just want to see the spaceship, to be honest.
And so there's these pieces of cardboard with the lettering on them. You would have to watch it to see what I'm talking about exactly, but it is a bizarre look to the movies that we've seen so far.
Yeah, in comparison, for sure.
Yeah.
I think they were just going for Moonlight SY3. They're just going along with, like you said, Atragon. This movie was released as a double bill with a reissue of Atragon. So, Atragon, not the film so much. The film, yes, but the vehicle itself was very popular. So I think they were trying to reproduce that popularity.
Did we ever go into the? Did we go into the future with Godzilla versus or Godzilla Space whatever the?
Which one? Astro Monster.
Astro Monster. Yeah.
That one was 1907X, and then there was another one that was Link Ghidorah that was 196X.
So this isn't the first time that we've just randomly gone into the future in the middle of the series.
But this is the first time that we're shown Monsterland. It's Monster Island, but in at least the Japanese dub, and possibly the English one as well, it's Monsterland.
Monsterland sounds like a theme park thing, and what it is like a nature reserve for the monsters in the future, though, because obviously they couldn't contain them until the late 90s.
Yeah, and the more I think about this, the more I really don't like this concept, to be honest. As a kid, all right, cool, they're all in one spot. When you think of the logistics of having many giant monsters on one island, and I believe they are on one island, where they're at actually, it's based off of a real life series of islands, and these real life series of islands is they are called the let me find the Ogasawara Island chain, and they've been called the like tropics of Asia, where yeah, they're really prolific, and there's many different species. They're hardly inhabited by anything, and they just keep using this
anybody
island
you
chain.
mean?
Yeah,
you just said
anybody.
it was prolific in life. You put
with
you mean
like
it doesn't have people?
animal species, yeah.
Oh, so okay.
So
All right.
you get a lot of animal species. It's just a really cool real life place to kind of envision having all these monsters, and it's just like it's a paradise untouched, really. And then you get, but I don't like it, Joe. I don't, because why? Okay, so how are they being contained here, Joe? We're shown Mothra, and then we're shown Rodan.
They're being contained based on each monster. So each monster that's there kind of has its own containment
Field, I guess.
thing. So with Mothra, they stop it with some sort of gas, I guess.
Yeah.
And with Rodan, we just saw here, Rodan has like these radio beams or something.
It's a
that are-
magnetic field, I
a
think they
magnetic
said?
field of some kind.
Some weird writing
Yeah,
construct,
some
totally
pseudoscience
non-based in science.
thing,
Yeah.
that's stopping all the monsters from leaving. I don't know how they stop Godzilla from leaving.
But to me, it's just that, all right, all the monsters suddenly are living peacefully on a small island. All right.
Yeah, I didn't know
I would
that's
think
what
they would be
Monster Island
killing
was,
each other.
because there's other Monster Islands in the series that I remember there being a Monster Island. I feel like, there's other Monster Islands, but
Yeah.
maybe it's not this is specific island, because
Yeah.
like I'm thinking of like the King Kong had his own island, of course, and then Mothra had her own
So
own
I'm seeing
island.
for the first time here, Joe, they're looking down at a diagram of Monster Island, and it does look like it's different islands.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
all right, now...
Probably because all the monsters would fight each other. you know?
Yeah, and there's a little, like, red ringed off area there. Do you think that would have been for Ibira? I don't know. Ibira doesn't show up in this, but they were planning to have Ibira and another monster, Maguma, in it that I guess showed up in some Toho movie.
Yeah.
Anyway, most of them make it here, though. Most of the monsters introduced so far. All right, we're seeing our main characters.
Are they though?
They're...
So we got Japanese Clark Kent, and then we got a new
Yes.
actress here who is named Yukiko Kobayashi. She's basically, our female. Ooh, look at the pretty ladies of the Godzilla series.
Yeah, she is our female of this movie.
Yeah.
They rotate them out. They really do.
They do. They're like these little I don't know, these like temporary idols for Toho. That's what I'm starting to see now. Their star system is just different.
Oh yeah, especially for the females.
Most of our cast, though, honestly, are like they're redos. Most of our cast have been in a Godzilla movie or one of these monster movies before.
There certainly
with Ishiro
are
Honda.
veterans of Godzilla film and Toho monster movies in general.
Yeah. So this girl, Yukiko Kobayashi, there's not much information on her, unfortunately.
Oh, the
out
actress
there.
herself.
And she had a very short film career. She was born October 6th, 1946 in Japan. I don't know if she's still alive or dead. She's certainly up there in age if she is still alive.
Yeah,
only appeared in like 9 films and one sort of serialized thing
Okay.
in 3 years.
Wow.
And that was it.
Well, at least she did a lot in 3 years.
Yeah, her second movie was... I mean, that is a lot of films in 3 years, but that's not a lot of films to have as a
total
star
career.
actress in kind of big movies.
Yeah,
So-
because this would have been a big movie for sure.
Yeah, it should have been a big movie, but it wasn't. This was actually her second movie. And she's well known. Besides this movie, she's most well known for a movie which I've never heard of called "Throw Away Your Books." I guess that's what IMDb is showing me.
Huh.
And then there is one movie on here that is intriguing me. If you guys are near a phone or something, you got to look up the poster to this movie because it looks legit.
You mean a smartphone for sure? So someone just like
Yeah, not a flip phone. That might be troublesome. But you could go to find this movie. It's called Fear of the Ghost House, Blood-Sucking Doll.
this is a Japanese
This is
film.
from 1971. It's a Japanese movie, and it has a legit a legit poster. I showed
yeah.
it to you, Drew.
Looked Italian horror-ish, which they have the best posters, like Black Sabbath and all these Italian horror influence. It looks highly Italian influenced, very colorful, very standout. The female at the front, the only thing that would have made it more Italian horror would have been her eyes, just all very pronounced and hypnotic.
Yeah, that would have been the thing, but it's just a very vivid and awesome poster.
Yeah,
so
really colorful.
I might just have to find that movie just to be like, does it match to the poster? Is
there a monster in the film?
But yeah, she's kind of our newcomer here. I mean, we got Japanese Clark Kent kind of playing her brother / boyfriend. I don't know who. Yeah, I don't know his relationship to her. It wasn't very clear in the
he's
movie.
The nerdy boyfriend who saved the world in Astro Monster, and the reporter that stumbled onto the island in Son of Godzilla. So this time, I believe, is the first time he's really the lead. And I mean, he is the lead because there is only a lead in this film. I don't hear, Joe, more than halfway through this film, I was still questioning what his name was. I don't think they say his name until near the end. I would have bet money that they weren't even going to say his name. And then near the end, they kind of just one-off, say it.
So the monsters are released,
yeah,
and they don't know quite how or why. But then the monsters go off and they start attacking just main cities, like big capital cities all around the world.
Yeah, Godzilla attacks New York. Rodan invades Moscow. Mothra, its larva offspring. We don't get butterfly Mothra in this at all, unfortunately. Yeah, absolutely. It lays waste to Beijing. Gorosaurus, wrongly identified as Baragon, which we should get into here. So, Joe, did you look up why they couldn't use Baragon for this?
No, I did not.
So Baragon was being used, the Baragon suit was being used a lot by Tsuburaya Productions, which I'm supposing it would have probably been for Ultraman, because apparently Ultraman went from, I want to say 66 to 67, but it could have started in 65, produced 39 episodes, and Ultraman, the series, definite tokusatsu staple in that it's just special effects heavy science fiction. Tsuburaya was taking the Baragon suit and using it for so many of the monsters. It was just being repurposed constantly, and so since in certain scenes when they needed to film Baragon for this movie, they couldn't use the suit because it was being used by Tsuburaya, or it was just not in good enough shape to be used. So we see Gorosaurus instead burrowing through the ground to break down that iconic structure in France. I don't know what it's called. It's like that arch.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Not the, or it's in Greece. I don't know. It's a European structure, that arch.
It's in France.
Okay. But yeah, Gorosaurus came up through the ground, which is not, burrowing is not one of Gorosaurus's abilities. He's got the kangaroo kick, and that's about it. But yeah, so they just decided to use Gorosaurus for the same scene because, I mean, it's a spectacle of a scene. You got to show off that Gorosaurus is destroying something, but I believe they wrongly identify him as Baragon, as well as, of course, they're using the wrong powers to the wrong monster. Interestingly enough, in the storybooks, like comic book tie-ins and children's books of this film, adaptations of the film, they put Baragon in there. So it's only the film where they get that wrong.
Could we say that this is almost the Avengers of its day, except that it wasn't nearly as successful as the movies that came before?
You want to know, Joe? I don't know
the
if
opposite of successful, but they kind of try to do the same, like a similar thing.
I really don't know if we've discussed this, but where Avengers, at least not comic book wise, but certainly cinematic universe wise, what we have nowadays in the Marvel films, they draw influences from these Godzilla films. So Destroy All Monsters. So Avengers is the Destroy All Monsters movie, in that this is a formula that was basically first used in these films. You take, for instance,
you need a reason to bring all these other things from other movies together,
and it's supposed to be huge. I think Avengers worked better the first one than this film.
I like make Avengers. You say that, Drew.
This film's not good. Straight out the gate. I was first confused. So we're seeing. We can get into that, but we're seeing Moonlight SY3 here ejecting
spaceship
from the moon. Yeah, the spaceship coming off of the moon. At the beginning of the film, it was going from the Earth to the moon. Now it's going back to Earth. And I was confused because you don't know what the ship is. And I was like, why is the whole structure of the ship still intact in regular
Look,
NASA
man, it's
rockets?
1999.
I know.
You can do anything.
It can. But in regular NASA rockets, you have like a small part of the ship that shoots off from the giant amount of fuel, the huge rocket that, you know, jettisons it into space. This... First off, SY3 is not stylized like Atragon. There's not much making it stand out, so it's just a little bland aesthetically. There's nothing immediately that's like tells me as an audience just visually this is a future like craft of some sort. So it took a while for me to get what in the
it was
transformer
move there.
Yeah, it just keeps kind of transforming, and we're making it sound cooler than it is because it only barely transforms.
I did like the lens flare thing going on in the last
Ooh,
scene.
a little pre.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah, pre JJ.
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah, it's still doing it every time the SY3 is on screen. It always has this little lens flare thing.
Yeah, they really tried to sell us on that ship.
They did. So yeah, this was kind of going to be a culmination point almost for the Godzilla series. In fact, it was rumored that Toho wasn't going to produce any more Godzilla movies after this. Of course, that turned out not to be true. Even within the Showa era, that turned out not to be true.
They continued doing them through the 70s. Hey, this is actually, I believe it was Tsuburaya, or at least the effects director, since I don't know how much Tsuburaya, he was overseeing the effects on this.
Yeah, he wasn't the official guy.
Yeah, there was someone else, but I mean, I'm pretty sure they used his name because, you know, his name and his clout. But it was Tanaka that said, the producer, who said they were basically running out of ideas. And this is Tanaka who, when it came to Son of Godzilla, before that movie was made, everyone else around him involved in these films was saying, we're out of ideas. So when Tanaka, the producer who has been pushing these films, when he's saying you're out of ideas, you're running out of ideas. And finally, you know, everyone's going to get on board with that. But they still continue to make them films.
Yeah, so Honda was brought back in after having not done
the last two.
A couple of Godzilla movies. And someone new that was also brought in that Honda was not used to working with was the new cinematographer. So Honda usually, I can't remember the name of his regular cinematographer. I'm sure we've talked about him on another show. But Honda kind of had his go-to cinematographer. But for this film, for whatever reason, this dude named Taiichi Kankura was hired. And this guy, there's not really much information on either, which frustrated me.
He hasn't done much.
All I know was that he was born on April 30th, 1912, and this movie, and he had like 68 credits. He had 68 movies that he was a cinematographer of, and this was his third to last one. This movie, third to last of 68 credited films. I don't know if this guy died because I cannot find information on him.
I was going to say, hopefully not pulled a Tsuburaya, as in died around 70. Tsuburaya died at like the peak of his of his profession.
This guy would be in his like 30s at that point, but he did 68
a lot younger
movies.
than Tsuburaya.
And then I think 2 more movies after this.
Were they Toho effects
and
movies?
They were effects movies as well. I don't know if they're Toho movies. I would have to look it up. But then he just doesn't have a career that I can find online doing research for this.
Yeah.
So I don't know where he went. It's honestly like a gigantic mystery to me. So if anybody knows about Taiichi Kankura, or maybe knows, you know, can search the Japanese internet and find out more information on him, I would like to know.
Yeah,
he seemed to have like a huge career, and then it just suddenly he just stopped. So maybe he died, or maybe he decided to switch careers, or maybe he switched his name. I have no idea. But he was the new cinematographer, and I can say that this movie is a little bit more lively than most of the Honda works before it, since we've watched them. He's usually a much sort of flatter director or whatever, and a lot of that a lot of the decisions with how a movie looks and how it's shot is made with the cinematographer. So I feel like it's this guy who kind of livened up the Honda work, or it was the fact that they were kind of matching the Jun Fukuda directed previous two movies.
There's a lot. Akira and Son of Godzilla, exactly. It feels like it's going to be, it is sort of some amalgamation of them, because like when you see this shot, you see all the characters in a shot and they're all pretty well placed in the shot. That's a Honda shot.
Yeah, that's a Honda shot. You're right. But then we're definitely getting quicker cuts.
Yeah, we have shootouts.
More close-ups. A lot less of the Dutch angles that Jun Fukuda did sometimes. Like, there's no crazy camera work that I remember.
To my remembering, I don't remember a single Dutch angle.
It's certainly more stoic looking.
Yeah.
But
yeah, there's still action in it, more than we get from, say, just any regular Honda film. And I mean, I'm saying action with the characters, not with the monsters.
Yeah. So anyway, that's what I found on him. So there is actually a reason. I found this out while researching for this movie, and I should have brought it up before, but I didn't know about it. So Honda rejected the last two Godzilla movies.
Well,
offered them and rejected them.
Okay, because what I read was that Tanaka was just using a different crew to see if these films could really function further, being helmed by someone different.
Okay, well,
so it could have been a combination of both.
It could be either, or it could be one or the other. Who knows? And you're going to have conflicting things when you do this sort of research on something this old. But I heard that Honda had been offered Son of Godzilla and offered Ibira, and rejected both of them, especially Son of Godzilla, because he thought that. He thought it was as stupid as I think it is.
Hey, ironically, okay, we say that, and yet he's going to be the director for our next Son of Godzilla venture, the next film, All Monsters Attack.
That is true, but he actually, so his assistant, a previous assistant of his, Fukuda, was given those movies. And get this, Fukuda was actually a huge fan of the original Godzilla movie.
Oh, who wasn't in Japan at the time?
And was of the opinion that no sequel should have ever been made for it. But he took the job directing both of those movies, despite holding that opinion.
Well, then also Honda did the same in that he kept doing these films when there doesn't need to be, I don't know. I think that the spirit of the film, the original Godzilla, died with Godzilla in that film. As in, of course, it is a different Godzilla with every film, but there's supposed to be a different feeling. That movie is so somber in tone and so dramatic. And all these films, none of them, especially this one, come even close to matching the dramatic, just amazing
heaviness
work.
or the darkness.
There's
a whole bunch
the overall message. Yeah,
I have here that Honda actually took this one though because he thought not only that it was going to be the last Godzilla movie, as was rumored, but also that it was going to be a more serious movie. And so he felt like it would be something that he would be able, or he felt like it would be good for him to direct because it would be slightly more serious.
Well, this is the first, speaking of serious, this is the first screenplay written by Takeshi Kimura. Ashiro Honda also is credited as writing the screenplay. Yeah. But, he definitely had a basis for thinking that, because Takeshi Kimura wrote the serious Godzilla films. He only wrote the first two. The six before this, because this is the 9th entry in the Godzilla franchise, they were written by Shinichi Sekizawa, our less serious writer. So if you're gonna put your money on it being a serious film, put it on one that's been written by Takeshi Kimura.
So, did he... Okay, so Takeshi Kimura did Frankenstein Conquers the World.
Yes. And he did the first two. Every single other Godzilla film before this, minus the first two, were written by Shinichi Sekizawa, at least in part.
Yeah, actually, I'm looking at the movies from Takeshi Kimura, and I'm digging them. So there's this one, which I kind of halfway dig. We'll
Did
get
he do
into
King Kong Escapes?
my own personal opinions of it here soon. Godzilla vs. Hedorah, which I've never seen, but we will see soon.
Oh, that's one of my favorites.
Frankenstein Conquers the World, which I think is one of the best movies that we watched on the show.
Yeah.
King Kong Escapes, which I love as well.
Joe, really quick, we're getting our first shootout. I love how this guy.
yeah, that's
I
right.
love how this guy. Okay, did you see that? They're having a shootout where they're crouched behind the control panels in this. So there is a control room underneath Monster Island where scientists are, controlling the habitat for the monsters. It's been taken over by the Kallax, this alien species, and they've set loose the monsters around the world. Our intrepid voyagers, space patrol, Earth patrols, policemen, scientists, whatever they are in yellow suits, come to this island back from the moon to figure out what's going on. They find our female lead and a man, which they capture. They are scientists, but they're acting strange. They are taken to visit the Kallax for the first time. The Kallax tell them about their plan to take over the world, make it a more scientific civilization. And then there's a shootout that follows because our intrepid voyagers are not having that. So they have a shootout, very James Bond style, similar to King Kong Escapes in tone, I want to say, because I don't want to say they're ripping James Bond off, but they're really going for that style. They're trying to mesh that with a Godzilla film. But anyway, real quick, in the shootout, two guys get shot, one in the head, which makes sense. The other one is squarely crouched behind a control panel. And then all of a sudden he stands up and is holding a wound in his gut. So I have no idea how he got shot in his gut.
He got shot there, yeah. Well, maybe it just went through the furniture or whatever.
I thought he was trying to crouch underneath the table, and maybe they shot him under the table, but nah, that was a solid control panel.
So, once again, back on Takeshi.
Yeah.
He also wrote Rodan in a movie called Matango. Those are also his biggest. So he does have a sort of serious edge to him.
I was going to say, of any films besides the first one in like dramatic message and really what you're taking away from it, Rodan.
I would argue Frankenstein Conquers the World is also in that category.
Oh, absolutely. But Rodan, especially that final scene, man, on the volcano.
Yeah.
That's heavy.
I agree. That is pretty heavy. Oh, and the Mysterians. Look at that.
Oh, I really want to see the Mysterians. Cannot wait to do that for this podcast.
Yeah, I'm excited too. There was a shot here that we kind of skipped over here. These guys are talking in this room. Oh yeah. Oh shoot! I forgot to. We got to talk about this.
What's happening right now?
The fucking suicide, or the freaking oh, shoot,
the suicide.
The freaking suicide scene. Or at least you think it's a suicide scene for a second, you know?
It is, though. It's weird because it doesn't seem like it is, but in the end, it was.
So randomly, this guy
and
just
there's
like
no
goes.
Score. Joe, when he kills himself, no score. Second shootout, just almost two in a row here. No score. There's no music going along with it, and it feels weird.
Yeah, a dude steps out of a window and just goes for it. He just falls.
He was a scientist captured by our intrepid voyage, our scientist policeman, and it was speculated that they were being mind controlled. Yeah, he was definitely being mind controlled because he killed himself. He got captured, and so the second he was kind of just left alone because they turned around to take smoke, he just jumped out of a high rise, killed himself on the beach, and here comes our shootout.
My thing with that scene though is like usually in most movies, if you got a suicide scene like that,
yeah,
you see them. Let's say they go out the window. If anything, if they even show you anything at all, they will show you just the body on the ground.
Yeah, anything.
But this one, he goes for the window, and then we see a full-on shot of him falling.
Yeah,
and
a shot at length.
And it's not like a Hitchcock shot where they're like, they're falling from like the top view down.
POV looking down.
This is like the
camera is following.
It's following this dummy, falling to the ground. And I would say that actually the mannequin is like not that bad of a mannequin, but you know it is just because you know the situation,
it's not moving.
And there's no way that you could have a stuntman do that fall. At least,
and
there are ways that you could have the stuntman do that fall, but not in this case.
But they would be flailing their limbs everywhere.
and it's just an awkwardly shot scene. But I will tell you that I was pretty shocked because I was like, "What? Wait a minute! What is happening?"
Yeah, all of a sudden
there's
for
a
the first
suicide
time in the
scene
film,
in a
our interest is
Godzilla
captured.
movie.
The only other one I wanted to say was in Mothra versus Godzilla, and that guy wasn't trying to commit suicide. He was just in the building while Godzilla stomped it.
Yeah, so we got a full-on shootout, which totally has never happened in a Godzilla movie.
2 in a row.
Like legitimate shootout.
Yeah.
And then we got a suicide scene. And then we got a scene where he's like freaking, this is disgusting. So
I have a razor phobia, and I didn't feel one because it's very obviously a makeup effect.
so they're doing surgery on the guy who
They find a BB
died on
behind
the
his ear.
beach.
I mean, a control device.
There's like a lump behind his ear, right?
Yeah.
And you're saying it looks so fake, and I agree with you. It does look so fake. But then they just go ahead and take a razor blade to it while you're watching it. So
Yeah.
there's no cutaway or anything. It just goes for it.
Yep.
I would say, true, now that I'm thinking about it, I mean, besides maybe the first Godzilla movie, which is kind of morbid and stuff, and this is
but morbid,
this is a
but-
less morbid movie, but this is I would say, this is a pretty violent movie.
Much of it was implied, though, in the original Godzilla. I mean, it showed us the wife and her children saying, "We're about to join father." So that's not at all implied. But then the crushing of the building, it didn't show them being crushed.
No.
It just showed the building above them falling.
No, we totally saw this dude fall into his death.
Yeah.
And we also just saw them take a razor blade to the lump on his neck, which
To talk about that
was
suicide,
disgusting.
it's hard to not take it comically, simply due to the fact that he jumps out and it's followed. Like Joe
just
said,
random.
the camera follows him. So it loses the dramatic edge where he's supposed to, you're supposed to be like, whoa, he killed himself. No, we just watched a doll fly out of a window. I want to say, Joe, a lot of the budget went to the inside of Moonlight SY3.
Actually, I would say overall, this movie looks pretty good. And you're saying a lot of budget went to the SY3. I think
The interior design and their suits.
There's other interiors in this movie that I think
sets.
look very extensive and look very interesting to me. So I think the production designer did a really good job in this movie.
Okay.
For the most part. Something else that sells this movie, unlike the last movie we saw, like Frankenstein Conquers the World, unlike Frankenstein Conquers the World, whenever there's a real animal, like and I don't mean this. I don't mean this in the Godzilla sense, where they said real animal for one of the other monsters or whatever in one of the previous movies. I'm saying like we saw a cow just barely, and we saw
like an
dolphins at the beginning of the movie.
Yeah, stock footage of dolphins.
For the most part, they actually use real animals, and we see them, and so it kind of like it centers the movie in reality a little bit more, and in general, I don't know. I just think it's better for it.
Oh yeah, Joe. This old man that happens to stumble upon, he's just collecting rocks for whatever reason from the riverbed, and he stumbles upon a false rock, a fake rock that has a monster control device in it. When he's looking up through the binoculars, because the policeman, they hear this loud sound. The policeman comes out with binoculars, and the old man has been trying to show him this rock. The policeman goes, "It's Rodan," and then the old man grabs the binoculars away from him, looks up, says, "No, that's Moonlight SY3." And then they have this casual conversation about, "Oh yeah, that one time we went up to the moon with Takeshi." Okay.
Yeah, totally.
Again, it's throwing us for a loop. We don't know what they are. We don't know what the Voyagers
Dude, I'm
of
telling you,
SY3 are, because apparently they just take random civilians up to the moon as well.
Trips to the moon are just a common thing in 1999.
Even though, honestly, okay, production value-wise, they were going to have more showing off that this is the future. Things to the effect of, let me try to find these, Joe, but they didn't do them for budget constraints, but I'm going to have to find it. So they wanted to do things like show giant fruit. Just to, basically, it looks like modern day. They don't do much other than the sets where, like on Monster Island and Moonlight SY3,
The sci-fi sort of stuff.
Yeah, it doesn't look like it's the future. It looks like modern day
Yeah.
with some future stuff thrown in. It just happens to be that for plot convenience, they're able to, with future technology, and it's all shown off screen, able to like reverse engineer stuff that the aliens are using. Like right here, Joe, there's this weird radio with like a TV screen, and it's in color.
Radio.
It's a radio
TV
with
screen.
a broadband, like a wavelength dial, like a physical dial that you slide
like
back
FM
and forth.
radio.
Yeah.
And it's got a
got a
TV
color screen on
so in
it.
that way, I mean, they were kind of close to what it was, not 99, but a little later than that.
And I guess if you look at these guys' suits, that's supposed to be like futuristic because they're a really weird looking suit.
I didn't even notice their suits, frankly, so I guess it worked on me. Of course, I'm used to seeing this movie as a late 60s movie, so it just looks like a late 60s movie.
Oh, true. Yeah. The clothing styles don't really call attention to that it's futuristic.
Yeah, I mean, everything is kind of really bright and pastel-y sort of thing, but I think that was kind of what was in with the time.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure how far along they were with Gamera films, but they were, definitely more intended for children, so they're making these very colorful.
I think they just kind of kept with their own style of the day, frankly. Probably for budget. I don't think they tried to pull the movie that came out a few years ago, Her, where they like had slightly where they were trying to guess what the style was going to be like in a few years from now.
They didn't
just remember that it's not like American film is any better at guessing the future, because we should have had flying cars about 2 years ago.
Self-lacing shoes, hoverboards.
Yeah, hoverboards. Where are? I mean, we have things called hoverboards, but they're lame.
They're a little weird.
They're not hoverboards.
Nah,
I mean,
not at all.
Yeah, so that was a very non-Ishiro Honda shot. So we had some people like running away from Rodan, and then our main lead female, who's I don't know the names of any of the characters in this movie.
No,
so I'm sorry,
they're really
that's
not
the way
given
that
to
I'm
us.
Describing it.
They're really not given to us as an audience.
Her head, like huge in the foreground, like. She just enters into frame. She looks at the people, and then center frame, there is a focus pull on her face as she looks forward and has like a menacing look on her face.
Yeah, she's obviously mind controlled.
It's a very unusual shot for the time, and like a really vivid, almost Spielberg-y sort of shot. And
yeah, they're definitely going for unique cinematography.
It's different from what I'm seeing from Ishiro Honda. I mean, you see him in this movie, as you were saying before, but then again, he's obviously he's trying new things. So let's talk about the monsters that are obviously in full force here, or almost in full force here.
One thing I have to pride this film on, I think is cool, is that they tie monsters which were previously not part of the Godzilla monster universe together into the Godzilla universe. Monsters such as Manda, who we're seeing right now, Varon, and
missing
Baragon.
some anatomy that he had before.
Yeah, Joe, the reason for Manda's redesign is his head, because the body, that was a model that they used for Manda in Atragon. They just redid the head. The reason they redid the facial features of Manda and rebuilt his head was so that he didn't resemble King Ghidorah as much. That's why they took away the horns and the whiskers.
Sense.
Yeah.
I guess that makes sense in a kind of weird way.
It's a little strange that double build in the theaters originally. You had just seen Manda in Atragon. I mean, it was a reissue, so hopefully they didn't take out any more of Manda to try to conceal the differences, because Manda was barely in Atragon. But yeah, you just saw Manda, and now you're seeing Manda, and it looks way different.
So this is a section of the movie that was the first part where I was like, wow, the special effects have kind of upped a notch from the last Godzilla movie.
Yeah, it was up. The budget was up as well.
So I got a little write-up here from our Bible. It says, one of the best shots in the entire series, he says entire series, shows Manda coiling its body around a monorail's track in the foreground as Godzilla simultaneously blows up a gasoline refinery in the background, which we just saw.
Yeah.
Arikawa has commented on this scene, and he was the He was the special effects guy. He was the actual special effects guy.
Yeah, the real head.
Yeah. He said there was no such thinking as this would be cool or innovative, he said. They weren't thinking that way when they were doing the shot.
Okay.
I simply thought that we could do it because the staff had grown and learned together for some 20-odd years. I was doing things that Tsuburaya wanted to do back in the day, but couldn't, and only became possible because of the confidence I had felt, even if I couldn't do it myself.
Wow.
I could make it happen, so I said, let's try going for something that the others, other than just like a straight line action sort of setup.
I want to say a lot of faith in his crew members, the effects crew members. That's cool.
So I am pretty impressed with that section of the movie. I remember it quite vividly as we're watching it here. It's pretty awesome. Fumiko Nakashiro elaborates. It says, first we suspended it from above, then moved it to where the body
You're
will
talking
curve.
about the Manda model.
Yeah. Then we lowered the head in a certain way, which is done from wire running underneath the road, which has been loosed until a moment when the head reaches the curving point when we pull on the second wire in order to move it slightly towards the middle. So this is kind of like really extensive wire works here.
Because this is Manda coiling itself around like a Japanese speed train track.
So it says it doesn't go much further than that because of where the bottom wire is. When you get to a certain spot, you try to manipulating it as little as possible with the bottom wire and use the side wires to move it forward.
Yeah.
There are wires in several places, so planning on where to make the edits is quite a precise matter. Anyway, so that was a really kind of complex thing, and obviously he didn't want it to be a groundbreaking thing, Arikawa, but
not
it was
something
a
to take away
challenge to his
focus.
crew.
I do like the way Manda moves on land, which was not shown in Atragon.
No, in Atragon, he was a very boring monster.
Yeah, well, he was boring, but he didn't give us. There was no chance for him to really show us anything. He was barely in the film.
Yeah.
So, along with what you just said, though, Joe. So here's a little tidbit. During the Big Four monster attack on Tokyo by Godzilla, Rodan, Manda, and Mothra, there was a few minutes of footage shot of Godzilla and Manda fighting. It was later decided that it was out of character for the monsters to start fighting because they were under Kalak control. The scene was immediately scrapped, but it has been rumored that this scene was shot on spur of the moment, that the FX people were having a bit of fun having Manda attack Godzilla, and Tsuburaya just let the cameras roll during this.
Spending money.
Planned or not.
Spending money.
Planned or not, footage of this fight still exists and has been shown at many times at fan conventions.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, and I really think that would have been just one continuous shot taken from that perspective with Manda breaking apart the monorail track. That would have been cool. I mean, that's one thing that you gotta really like petition for. Show us that at our next convention, our next G-Fest.
Yeah. So what I'm, I guess that would be out of character for them, though. I guess I would agree with that because
they're all under Kalak control. They shouldn't fight each other.
Not only just because they're under Kalak control, but they were also living just fine at this nature reserve called Monsterland.
True.
And they maybe they just had their own kind of territory.
I want to say, like, I don't think that it showed Kumanga, our giant spider, in that opening scene where it, shows us Monster Island and we're showing all the monsters. But it seems like there's got to be different climates on the island, right? To, like, accommodate each different monster, I would think.
Or, they're just not going to get out, so they better get used to it.
One or the other. The justification of Monster Island, there's no explanation as to why they're living peacefully with each other, but they pacify us by saying there's plenty of food for them. That's what all those dolphin shots are shown, is they have plenty of food. Yeah. So that's why they want to stay there.
So nowadays when you color, sorry, I'm going off in a totally different part here, but I'm looking at this scene where all these people are in gray suits, and then we have our two leading characters. They're both in bright red.
Yeah, this is our lead female and our one lead male.
Something that's kind of missing from movies today, at least in the amount of thought that's put into the
wardrobe,
what I'm talking about right now, is that where your eye goes was always something that was on the minds of professional filmmakers for a long time. But now, since The Matrix was made, and since The Matrix color corrected their entire movie, digitally color corrected their entire movie.
The first one being "Oh Brother, Where Art Thou" with all the yellows, but then,
they did that. I don't think that was for the whole movie though.
No.
They did that extensively in "Oh Brother, Where Art Thou." But Matrix on they started doing it more and more because the Matrix they utilized
it allows a lot more control for
post-production color,
what is going into your film.
Yeah, but the thing is that you can do so much with that work. So you can just decide, hey, I want people to look at this Coke can, and so you'll darken the rest of the screen and then brighten up the Coke can, blur out things on other parts of the screen, sharpen the Coke can.
We've talked about this off podcast, but this is like Photoshop for film, for movie and video.
It's based out of Photoshop, so it's Photoshop for film, and people will go shot by shot, matching shots together color wise, which you wouldn't always have matching shots with film, and everything like that.
And we're saying film, but this is digital.
This is digital, and even film converted into digital, it's still, I guess, a digital image.
Yeah.
The thing is that, like, back in the day, though, they really had to think about from everywhere. They had to think about, where's your eye going to be and where does your eye need to be. And although they think about those things now, it's just not nearly as much thought. So the idea that everybody else is in gray suits, these two people are in bright red suits, they're going to be brighter lit as opposed to everybody else, and everything is done there on the shoot on the day, as opposed to mostly doing it on the shoot, but then
mostly doing it in post.
Now we need help later on
correcting it in post. Yes, and Joe, you got to take into account that this film, so if you're talking about this era and them doing that, this is still just over a decade past our black and white era of film. So, that's probably still more in their forefront of conscious thought that they're going to be doing that just during filming. Having certain things be more colored than others to draw attention to it.
Yeah, and I guess that is still the production designers and the costume designers. That is their job still today, but I still don't think there's nearly as much thought put into it, and especially on the director's part, just because it's like, oh, in post we're going to color grade it, and so you're going to pay attention to this or this or this, and maybe we don't need to place a light here right now.
With it being color as opposed to black and white, there's so much more visual information given to us as an audience, so the focal point
a
of
lot more to distract.
Oh yeah, I mean, we just have basic shapes and really the imagery is shapes in black and white and kind of the contrast of colors, but really it's only a scale of black to white. And recently I was listening to a podcast where they were talking about the silver and chrome edition of Mad Max Fury Road, that re-release of it in black and white, and that's what they were talking about, is the difference of watching that film versus the original with color.
I didn't even know that existed. I gotta check that out.
There's gonna be a re-release. I think it's already been released of that on Blu-ray, but then they had a limited theater release of that silver and chrome edition.
Drew, what do you think of the new Godzilla suit?
So this Godzilla suit I like.
You like this one?
Yep. Much more than the ones we've seen in the previous two films, especially Son of Godzilla, which in my opinion, is that your opinion, Joe, as well, the worst looking Godzilla of all time was Son of Godzilla.
Yeah, so far.
So, yeah.
So far.
I just don't think it's going to get worse, because at least, Joe, I believe to the end of the show.
The googly eyes like crazy in that one.
Yeah,
right?
they were toned down a little bit for this film. Still large, but not googly. I think it's due to part that the pupils are smaller in this film. He looks angry. This is I'm going to get the name of the suit, but this same suit is going to be used for at least the next 4 films, so I think it's going to be used up to the end of the Showa era of films. This is going to be our Godzilla to fight Hedorah, Gigan, which the same film, King Ghidorah as well, but then Megalon, and... All right, I'm getting the name of the suit here. It is the Soshingeki Goji suit. And this suit, of any Godzilla suit used in any era of Godzilla film is the most used suit. We're going to get to some facts on it when we get to the film. I believe it's Godzilla vs. Gigan, but it's caught on camera, the destruction of this suit, like pieces of it just flying off. Yeah. So this is actually one of the more popular Godzilla designs. It features a bell-shaped body, which, at least to defend the suit a little bit, at least it's not completely circular, like it says bell-shaped, but in Ebirah, we were talking about, to me at least, it looked like a giant Godzilla onesie. At least there's the texture on it of the suit, but it just looked like footy pajamas. One thing that I don't like about this suit, but is kind of a cool feature, is the ridge along his chest. To me, even as a kid watching this, or teenager when I was first viewing these films, it seems like that's where the zipper goes. It just looked like, okay, that's a cool little ridge along his chest and down his stomach, but like that's so obvious where that's where the zipper is.
Maybe
the head, at least, it's more rounded. The eyes are menacing looking, which is like finally, because they did not look good in Son of Godzilla at all. Eyes too big, neck too long,
I don't
no
think
snout.
we've had a good Godzilla suit since King Kong versus Godzilla.
And that one was a really good one. Okay,
that one was a good one, but it was unique, but it was a good
Yes.
one, I think.
If you took that suit and compared it to what it's transformed into at this point, they look like different creatures.
Yeah,
the head is so much more rounded. The back dorsal fins, like the spikes on his back, are much less pronounced. They're rounded. They're teeny tiny in comparison, especially to the reboot and like the 2000s and on. He basically doesn't have dorsal fins in the back. They're so small. Everything is kind of streamlined for the actor's movements, and we're supposed to, get more action out of that. But like aesthetic wise, it doesn't do it. It just doesn't fly.
Yeah. So the special effects director was the same guy who did Ebirah, and I think the Son of Godzilla as well.
Okay.
So that was Sadamasa Arikawa, as we were talking about before.
Yeah.
And I think A.G. Tsuburaya is still credited on this one, as you were saying earlier. I do wonder. Now I gotta find out like when they actually started crediting the right person.
Arikawa, yeah,
Arikawa. Because I actually think watching all this stuff, I know Arikawa. Obviously, in the last quote, a lot of it had to do with like he was building upon what Tsuburaya kind of made.
I think he was basically his apprentice prior to Tsuburaya really leaving. But then his name was attached.
I think his work is better than Tsuburaya's.
I think Tsuburaya was leaning more towards because he's going into TV and having these effects for TV. So you got to do them fast. You got to do them quick. You got to pump them out. This is all personal opinion, but yeah, I would tend to agree with Joe. I love the incorporation of Godzilla into this scene. So our human military, future military, they look like regular military to me though, with I guess future guns. They're all trying to invade the Kalak base, which I guess they know the approximate whereabouts of, but Godzilla's defending it because all these monsters still under Kalak control. They really very well blend in Godzilla in like the background and sometimes the foreground of these scenes with the military. It looks like he's there. I think this is the best blending of Godzilla in with actual footage of our heroes that we've had to date. So I got to give kudos to this scene for sure.
The line or wherever they're splicing the two pieces of film together in order to get that effect. So the military guys in the foreground, the Godzilla in the background. Not so much on this shot, but the previous shot. It's pretty well hidden.
Yeah.
And everything matches pretty well. So it's something we haven't gotten in a while because we've been watching. We've kind of gone back in time with the special effects as we've been catching up to this movie. I would say, and the special effects in this movie are way ahead.
Very often, especially in my memory, in like King Kong versus Godzilla, there's usually a very harsh edge to where the blue screen begins and ends. Yeah. Not quite to the standards of today, or like with a green screen, or even I want to say even to that era, because didn't you say, Joe, that 2001: A Space Odyssey came out around the same time?
It came out the same year.
And those
It's
effects
68.
those effects hold up wonderfully to this day.
Well, yeah, but the problem is that like 2001 is so ahead of its time and so well done that like the problem
It's hard to
with
compare.
going like, oh, did you know that 2001 came out like 10 years before Star Wars? And then you go, oh, that always makes Star Wars pale in comparison. It's like,
Okay.
the special effects are not as good in Star Wars as they are in 2001: A Space Odyssey. Or in this case, especially where it's like, oh, did you know that across the sea, they were making 2001: A Space Odyssey? And then it suddenly makes this movie, like, it just pales in comparison. It's like, oh, no, yeah, the special effects suck in this movie. But, I mean, 2001, I would say, is actually the exception and not the rule.
And although
2001 special effects are still great.
Or stellar.
Yeah.
But, you know,
Except maybe the ape suits.
in an attempt to make this film serious, I want to say that they still, maybe this is just perceived, but they're still doing these effects to somewhat comedic effect. They're not supposed to look absolutely perfect. I don't think that was ever Super Eye's style, except for maybe in his military effects for, like, you know, military films, which often were substituted for real military shots of like ships and fighter pilots. Yeah, the Kallax. So, Joe, I'm going to give you my ranking of our 3 invading alien species, and I say alien species, and I include the Mu Empire simply due to the fact that they're down under the ground, but they're kind of a conquering species.
All right, we got the Moon, and then the Astro Monster people, and
The
then these
Mu,
ones.
the Zillions from Astro Monster,
Okay.
and the Kallax. Where do you rank them? Mine goes Zillions, numero uno, the Mu Empire number 2, and the Kallax third. Personal opinion. I mean, we can go on with why, but
Well, I mean, in what way are we ranking them? Like, in how powerful they are?
their influence on the film, really, what's shown of them, and how they come across in the film.
Oh, yeah, then it would be the Moon or the
Zillions.
Zillions, yeah.
Number 1. Yeah, and I almost regret. So the way that you're getting our opinions on these films, and especially back to Astro Monster, we had not yet seen this film, and I haven't seen all of the rest of these films to the end of the Showa era. Films after this, I've seen most of these Showa era films, but if I had known that this is what was coming up compared to, say, Astro Monster or Ghidorah, I would have given it slightly more leeway, to be honest, because it is better than these films.
I think, okay, you're right. You're right about Astro Monster being a better movie, especially in comparison.
Story-wise.
But I can't pretend like it's great. I still love watching it because it is what it is. It's a Godzilla movie. It's great.
Yeah.
But
Some better than others, for sure.
Yeah, Astro Monster is a better movie than this one.
Oh, there we actually get in the dialogue the second name for those islands. They're the Bonin Islands. Yeah.
Yeah, look at the production design. Look at all this detail here, and it goes off like pretty far into the background. I'm actually pretty impressed.
I'm definitely impressed with the interiors of all of the scientific facilities which we have here. I believe they're back on Monster Island underground, and so they've obviously taken control of that back from the Kallax. One problem I had with this film, Joe, is that they just so quickly are able to take over Kallax technology and use it to their advantage. They just are able.
They reverse engineer it so quickly.
Yeah, there's a whole sequence, a whole sequence, whatever, a long period given to us in Astro Monster where the Japanese male lead is talking to Nick Adams and explaining to him what they did with their technology, with Zillion technology,
it's like
in order
a
to
big
thwart.
deal.
Yeah, really. It's explained to us as an audience. We get a breather, but this film goes at breakneck speed. It doesn't stop. It just keeps showing us this thing, the next thing, the next thing. And all the stuff that kind of seems important for us as audience members to experience just happens in the background. They just kind of flippantly mention that they now have the mind control technology for the monsters. And there's no reason to go into such detail about where they're going on the moon right now.
Do you agree with me, Drew?
Yeah.
That this movie is a damn good looking movie?
Yeah, I have to give it that. And really,
All right.
in many reviews that I've read, that's the
saving grace.
yeah.
Okay, so I even this shot right here is pretty cool.
That's what people keep giving it because you're seeing a lot more of the moon's surface as in comparison to Astro Monster, which I guess that would have been Planet X. But really, Planet X was shown to us in just a couple of shots.
So it's a great looking movie.
Yeah.
That is very, very thin on plot and character development.
Yeah.
So I would say this is just another example of all style, no substance, maybe.
Oh, definitely.
Honestly, like this movie, the entire point of this movie is that we have all these monsters from all these Toho movies that come together and fight at the end. You would hope that they would have a little bit more fighting at the end.
And it's it takes place in one spot. We have one big fight. Again, looking back on films that we viewed so far for the podcast, King Kong versus Godzilla, for example, they fight multiple times, multiple different locations. They fight and then they break apart, go and do their separate things, are shown doing other things, come back and fight again. One thing that I didn't give King Kong versus Godzilla credit for that I was saying would have really, in my opinion, made these battles better is if they had trees around along with boulders so they could use different things to fight with.
Yeah.
And I was even thinking, Joe, why can't they do things like use electrical wire to like choke each other out? Certain like or upend the electrical tower to like smash each other over the head with. Things that, like, because they're smart enough to, we're going to get into that at the end, but they're smart enough to recognize the Kalak as the threat, and that's explicitly stated to us at the end that the monsters instinctively know the Kalaks are the bad guys, basically. That ruins so much about these monsters for me.
Yeah.
Because does that mean, in retrospect, now that that's been confirmed, that we were the bad guys in all these films because the monsters come out and attack us, and it's never really explained why they come out of the water to attack us, because they're not coming out for food, except for Baragon. That's the only exception, and they only use that as a plot device, so we'd start thinking worse of Frankenstein. All right, anyway, the Kalaks, though. They're burning up the Moonlight SY3. I was hoping this would be the end of Moonlight SY3, to be honest.
It's not quite. I was going to bring up that it is funny to me that like the entire point of this movie is that our monsters will all fight, and they do.
Yeah,
and
they get to it eventually.
But most of the action in this movie is taking place with the people, but the paper thin character people. So like, let's say this action sequence where the SY3 it lands in the cave thing, and then suddenly the Kilaks start, flamethrowering
there's
they just start shooting flames all over and then attacking the SY3, and then these guys have to escape the heat, and they have to go to the Kilaks in a different route. We're taking so much time on this and so little time on the monsters, which is bizarre. It's bizarre that they made that choice. I certainly know that, like, despite thinking that it's definitely a terrible movie, Tokyo SOS, the 2004 Godzilla movie, that movie did not spare.
They made the monsters a focus.
It was all about the
monster
fighting. So it honestly surprised me watching this movie, knowing that this was kind of the first out of, I don't know, 3 or 4 of these Godzilla movies in the future that are kind of all the monsters up till now are all going to be in this movie, or at least most of them. Yeah. It's surprising that out of this being the first one that they'd spent so little time with those monster fights,
Really, they had the budget, but yeah, I agree fully. Could not agree more. If you're going to spend time with these main character, he kind of has a posse of guys that we haven't mentioned that run the ship
it's all
with
one
him.
Character, come on.
It really is though, because even his sidekick,
character.
I don't remember him having a line. Perhaps he has one throwaway line, but it's just the main guy. So really, his entire crew is throwaway. I thought, okay, Joe, why not give them at least stereotypical personalities? You could have had like the intelligent, nerdy one. You could have had
something like we had in Astro Monster, where we had the two astronaut dudes.
You know, at least give us a second comedic lead, which I thought his fairly pronounced companion of the like posse was going to be, but really he just overacts in certain scenes, which I'm talking about when they're being fired upon with the flamethrowers. He's wincing like so hard. And because all the other guys, I was trying to think back on the film after we reviewed it, and I was just preparing myself for this podcast. I can't even remember the faces of the other four guys. They focus so much on our Japanese Clark Kent that he has no personality. He's just the fix-it-all man. He is supposed to be the James Bond, I guess, of this film, and that he can do everything, and he's not even supposed to be charming, I guess, because he does nothing but forward the plot. That's it. And it's not a great plot. So just forwarding it does nothing for the development of his character or us having any investment in him at all. He's so one-dimensional. So, it's really hard for me to think of a more one-dimensional character.
Well, certainly one of the guys that doesn't talk and is in the background is more one-dimensional.
More one-dimensional character that's supposed to be a main character.
Supposed to be a lead, yeah. I agree. He's not great. Certainly the actor's fine, but the writing in this movie is... and
unfortunately, Honda's credited as a screenplay writer.
Honda and shoot, what is his name?
Takeshi Kimura, yeah.
They did not do a great job with the screenplay, which is sad because I like Kimura's other work, obviously.
Oh, very much so. There are more.
I would say this is an odd one out.
Favored Godzilla films. I had something. So.
Whoa!
It didn't make sense to me what was happening with the Kallax until after reading about them. It's always a bad sign where to understand more of the film, you have to read the plot synopsis of the film, and afterward you're like, oh yeah, that makes more sense. Mm-hmm. So we
Donnie Darko, because I totally had to look up shit on that.
Oh my god. Oh well, yes, but that movie's like.
I mean, it's awesome.
It communicates. Yes, it is for sure. It communicates to the audience that it's supposed to be left intentionally vague. You're supposed to interpret a lot into that film, and it's kind of like there's a lot of visuals in that film that leave you wanting more. Anyway, we didn't even mention that the Kallax are an all-female within quotes humanoid looking alien species, but then their true forms are these kind of metallic slugs where they can't move. They just turn into like
just a really crazy weird looking effect that I dig. So they come upon these rocks that are the Kallax, right?
Yeah.
And I don't even know how to explain this. So imagine like a squishy looking crystal rock thing,
like a metallic slug turning into a crystal rock.
Almost like, I would say more like a snail, because it's got like its big rock as its shell, and then it's like going into its shell.
Oh, okay, yeah.
It's such a looking effect. Like it's just like, it's creepy looking.
For once, the Kallax become creepy. Yeah. They're not intimidating at all. They're like in horror, science fiction horror, where you're supposed to have the bad guy. If you're using females as the bad guy, one very effective way of making them intimidating is making them eerie, creepy, weird. They're not that weird or creepy, so they just... What it feels like is they continue to set up something, the Kallax, and then they're just defeated. They're like, we got this thing going on, and then we shut them down. And this happens over and over and over, and they don't get away with much for very long at all in this film. They keep saying, we're going to do this, and then we thwart them. We're going to do this, we thwart them. And it seems like that's just what happens in films like this, but it happens so quickly, and they don't seem to be very smart.
How dare you, Drew? How dare you say?
We were dissing the Mu Empire for not being intelligent.
Oh, yeah, the Mu Empire is a bunch of idiots. They're a bunch of inbred people.
It's like the Kallax came down with so much force, quickly, taking the monsters off Monster Island, attacking capitals of the world, and then we just blow them out of the water really quickly. We're like,
dude,
we're sabotaging your technology. We're taking it over. Thanks. They basically gifted us their technology. They weren't that much of a threat.
This white guy's suit is a mystery to me.
It's a future suit. Man.
I guess it's a future suit, but it is so bizarre. I don't even know how it's put together. It's so bizarre looking.
You're talking about the American actor that's kind of amongst our Japanese scientists, and he seems to be an authority of some sort on something.
Yeah. He's got like the silver vest thing that looks like it doesn't really attach in the front, but it does. It's got like 6 different buttons, kind of like. I don't know how to explain it, man. It's one of the weirdest looking suits I've ever seen in my life.
Joe, we can't.
And the first time I saw it, I was like, is that like a half kimono, half suit thing? Like that he's got underneath his jacket? It's bizarre, man.
We can't draw attention away from this, Joe. This is supposed to be the most intense moment of the film.
Oh my God, yes. Oh, shit.
This is horrible.
Okay.
This is horrible.
Okay, so they have to get this thing open, and this guy gets this laser gun.
It's the Kalak control module for the monsters on Earth.
Thank you, because I would never remember that. So he's got like this laser gun, and he's shooting the laser gun, right? And that's one shot. And then where it's hitting is another shot.
And then there's a third shot of his sweating intense face.
Yeah, very close up to his face, sweating and intense. And then another shot of the line that's going to the power box for the laser gun that is
about
bursting into flames.
3 or 4 shots.
This is all these shots put together underneath this music and these sound effects, like going back and forth to all these different objects within this intense, is it gonna finally break through the thing? Dude, we've been talking about it this whole time. That's still going on. So it's okay, and they finally broke it open. So
it was happening before we started talking about it.
This montage of like intensity goes on for way too long.
And it's over something very stupid.
It needs to be re-edited where it like loops and makes
for like 20
changes,
minutes.
And I swear to God, dude, it could be one of those. This guy is using the laser gun for 10-hour videos on YouTube. It can go on forever. It already does go on forever,
but make it go on longer.
I'm like, is that the same shot? And they just keep on rehashing the same things.
I had to say to you, Joe, as it was happening, I'm like,
funny.
If this is the most intense part of this movie, please no, because it's terrible.
It's awful, but it's hilarious at the same time.
Hilariously awful.
Just the oh my God, all the shots are the same.
It's supposed to be so intense. He's pushing a button really hard.
Dude, I'm going to have to make that. I'm going to have to just make a video of doing that.
And then, Joe, you need to have like the slowest resolve of tension when the lady back on Earth is like, he cut it out. He broke loose from that, and it needs to just last for forever. That everyone's like, whew, whew, whew.
Yeah, dude, it's like 20 minutes long. Honestly, we were this whole time. This entire podcast has been over that one scene.
Yeah, we could have done an entire podcast on that one scene. That one intense scene.
Yeah, dude.
But man, it was bad. It was not. There was no intensity. He's just pushing a button, and it's kind of hot.
So have you ever seen Uranium before, Drew?
Is that a movie, or are you talking about the
actual
substance
element? Yeah.
No.
Okay, so I went to a uranium mine when I was doing a trip for Boy Scouts back in the day.
Is that why you're so weird, Joe?
Yeah, just like a cancerous beast. Anyway, it's this kind of yellow powdery substance that's just embedded in the rocks.
Okay.
And it's something interesting to me that they did for Godzilla vs. Mothra and this movie right now is every time they have sort of what you assume because it's the 60s is like some irradiated or weird substancey rock material, it's always rainbow colored.
Well, yeah, you gotta remember the cow dung.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
But that was a Godzilla
Mothra
scale. Yeah,
yeah.
And it looks like it's covered in oil or gas.
Yeah,
it's all rainbow
it looks
colored.
it looks like cow dung that was like in oil that was sort of left out. It looks terrible.
Yeah.
I always wonder why they do the rainbow thing because I'm looking at the rainbow thing and I'm just like it's just kind of weird.
I think it's just supposed to be ambiguous as like it's ambiguous radioactive. Yeah, it's weird, so it's radioactive. Rainbow. And we have failed to mention the military hardware, like the missiles and tanks in this future. they just kind of attach more things to them. It's like to attach future technology. They look like regular tanks and regular missile launchers, but they attach weird, like, extended gadgets to them, and they're futuristic. So one thing about Manila that was pointed out to me throughout reading it, Joe, this is supposed to take place.
Stupid and
This
should
is
die.
supposed to take place 40 years later. Why has he not grown up?
Oh,
This is
man.
foolproof evidence
How
showing
old is
that he is
Godzilla?
stunted. Well, and Anguirus and blah, blah, blah.
He's
But
stunted.
stunted growth. I mean, he was a preemie. He really was. They prematurely cracked open that egg. And the weird thing is he so quickly grew from that disgusting fetus that came out of the egg into his, like, childish form, but still definitely more fully grown than the fetus. And yet 40 years later, still a little baby. I gotta say, he's got problems.
My assumption is that Godzilla is just super old. Or
This shot though, Joe, all the monsters.
yeah, all the monsters on the side. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. So there's a glamour shot of every single monster, and count them up. There's 10. Well, minus Kumonga in that shot at least. There's 10 monsters. Really, there's only 7 that interact in the fight because we get... Joe, was it really necessary for us to watch these films prior to this that introduced the other monsters?
Yes.
Justifying what we saw.
No, not really.
They're barely shown. Baragon is barely used. Varon is not used and mentioned once flippantly during the fight. But even though he's shown on Monster Island in the final scene, when they're all back on Monster Island, spoilers, we're giving away the end. Varon isn't mentioned by name then. So the Varon suit had been 11 years old and in storage at that point. It didn't hold up well throughout the production of Varon, really the production of the action scenes with the monster, and then they just hastily edited together a story. But it was falling apart, looked terrible. So they used a small prop for Varon.
So I must be missing a monster here because I got a list of monsters for this movie.
Okay, which you want to read them off?
And maybe I'm just gonna go grab the DVD case, but I do have like how many appearances so far for some of these.
I think we can do this together.
So this is Anguirus is only his second appearance.
Yes.
So he hasn't showed up since the second Godzilla.
Since Raids again.
And he really hasn't changed his design as far as I can tell.
Not much. I don't think there are differences, and this is the same with the Godzilla suit we're shown in this film. They're going to reuse that Anguirus suit for these future Showa films, with very minor differences. Really, they're just removing some teeth, they're adding tusks. They're going to make some facial differences, but mostly this is the Anguirus we're going to stick with through the rest of the Showa era.
This is apparently Rodan's 4th appearance, but the third one I remember.
Rodan and Mothra will not show up in any more Showa era films, sadly.
Oh, really?
Prominently featured throughout the early Showa era films. This is their last appearance.
Okay. I got Mothra's 5th appearance. So
Okay.
there you go.
And the second appearance of Mothra, second only in the entirety of Mothra films, where she's not showed with her little fairies, the Shobijin.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay. And then I also got, I don't know how many. I think it's probably the second King Ghidorah that we've seen. And then this is Godzilla's 9th appearance.
This is the third King Ghidorah.
Is it?
Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster, a film titled that, Astro Monster, and then this one.
No. Astro Monster is Ghidorah the Three. Wait.
Yeah, so there's 3 appearances.
No, I think-
Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster, one film, Astro Monster.
Have I forgotten a movie?
And then this one. But yeah,
Maybe.
the only difference to the Ghidorah... So, Anguirus and Godzilla got fully new suits for this film. King Ghidorah and Rodan's suits were just slightly modified for this film. This Ghidorah has the least amount of detail of any Ghidorah we're going to see put on film.
I do like his kind of lifeless look in this one.
Yeah, because he's under mind control, and really he shows that off in his eyes because they're pretty much blacked out. Joe, when it very first showed Ghidorah and it showed his blacked out eyes, Joe was quite disturbed. It's like, what's wrong with his eyes?
gross.
Yeah.
Yeah, his eyes are different looking than what I remember.
And we just saw in that shot, and you mentioned, Joe, Gorosaurus is of a very different height than he was in King Kong Escapes. He is as tall as Godzilla.
Yeah, that's crazy. So I guess it's not that off because King Kong was also Godzilla's size, but in my mind I was thinking King Kong was shorter. But I also just thought Gorosaurus was a smaller animal than he actually is. He's almost Godzilla's size. In fact, he's bigger in many ways. And
as
it's like,
stated
what?
officially in King Kong Escapes, Gorosaurus and King Kong are smaller than this Godzilla, at least. Godzilla just continues to grow through these films. But Gorosaurus as well, it just messes up in the continuity because officially this is that Gorosaurus from King Kong Escapes. That Gorosaurus was killed. Also, this Gorosaurus is just bigger. The Varon, they've stated officially in the film, or of the film, so surrounding the film, Toho has officially stated that's a different Varon, and he's definitely smaller
just
than
like
the original
of the
Varon.
same species, I guess.
Yeah, kind of like we have a different Godzilla post the original film.
Okay, so this is the list of monsters on the back of the Blu-ray. We got Godzilla.
Okay, 1.
We got Mothra.
2. Larva form, Mothra.
Yeah. King Ghidorah.
3.
Rodan.
4.
Gorosaurus.
5.
Anguirus.
6.
Kumonga.
7.
Manda.
And those 7 prominently featured in this fight, and now we're getting into non-featured in the final fight. Manda, 8.
Manda Manila.
Oh, okay. He is in the final fight.
Manila.
Vanilla. Millie Vanilla.
Manila Vanilla. What is that, the band? I can't remember.
Baragon.
And then Varon.
So 10, 11, somewhere in that range.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Man, all right, there's something very wrong with the killing of Ghidorah in this film.
This is sick. Okay, so they beat the crap out of King Ghidorah,
They beat him to death. They beat him to death.
Then they're like still beating him while he's down in like such a disgusting animalistic way that I'm like, ugh, this is making me uncomfortable.
2 heads have been taken out. Yeah, it is uncomfortable because prior to this film, King Ghidorah always set up as a bad guy. In this film, he doesn't do anything as to the destruction of the Earth. He just comes down and is mind controlled. They're kind of using Ghidorah as their final weapon against the Earth to take out these monsters. And they say the invincible space monster Ghidorah, dude, he's taken out so quickly. He stands no chance against all these monsters. We watched this entire
movie, had to deal with all this stupid plot about these aliens and all this other crap. And then the monster fight lasts for 4 minutes.
Yep. And also, Joe, Manila gives the final blow with his atomic smoke ring. Again, 40 years later, and Manila still hasn't learned how to blow atomic breath correctly.
Does it count as a 12th monster if we count the burning monster?
No, it's not a monster, man. It's not the the fiery dragon or burning dragon. I guess in manga adaptations of this film, it actually takes on a fire dragon form, like the fire forms a dragon. So, Joe, I want to say in all films prior to this Toho giant monster films, at the end, the 2 combatants kind of just flee. It's left ambiguous as to what happens to the monsters. They either scuttle away, as in the octopus versus King Kong and King Kong versus Godzilla. His kind of just leaves. Either that or, say, Frankenstein conquers the world, they're consumed into the earth. But usually they just fall into water and it's left ambiguous what happens to the monster. It spares the audience from the gravity of what's actually happening, because we tend to anthropomorphize these monsters, but really they're just animals. They're just animals. So they're acting on animal instincts. They will kill their opponent. So they just kill Ghidorah. Yeah. This is the first time in a film when they just kill him.
It's the way that King Ghidorah lays there limp, the blood, and the fact that they're still like attacking him despite him being on the ground,
and they leave and his corpse is there.
It's really gross. It's gross. At a certain point I was like, oh, this is going a little too far.
With all other films, we're allowed as audience members to rejoice in the end of the monster battle, left ambiguous, and we're spared the real death of monsters because they just leave. In this film, he gets killed, so there's no satisfaction.
Or there's some sort of like explosive ending to it. Like
Yeah.
if a monster dies or something like that. But
Well, I want to say that's like Super Sentai type endings, but that's so over the top that you don't get the emotion involved in the destruction of the monster because they just explode. And you're like, whoa, okay. But it's like so realistic, the depiction of
gross.
Ghidorah's death. Yeah, I fully agree that it's gross.
yeah, they may as well like rape him.
I don't want
afterwards. They just like
Rape and pillage
They
his
get all.
corpse.
They get all.
Bestial.
Shoot, what's the word I'm looking for? Like
Oh,
what's it called when you like dead bodies?
Necrophilia?
Necrophiliac, a little bit. Like
Well-
they might as well have gone that dark.
They
'Cause
just
it was really gross.
in any case, they should have at least eaten him. I mean, why not? He's food
Oh, yeah,
at
that's
that
a good
point.
point. Yeah,
I guess
I
they
saw
don't like.
Rodan kill a innocent dolphin earlier on in this movie.
Yeah, a rather large dolphin. Yeah, I mean they're animals. Maybe they don't like the taste of space meat. But yeah, it's so unsatisfying,
Give me some
the
of that
ending to
space
that,
meat.
because Ghidorah's killed. What did he do in this film to deserve that? They kill him.
Well, they were going to destroy the Earth with him.
Yeah, but he doesn't do anything to destroy the Earth. He just comes down. And again, in Ghidorah's defense, he's mind controlled the whole time. So he's not even fighting them of his own will. What I would have enjoyed would have been an ambiguous ending, or somehow
I'm fine with
the
him
monsters.
dying. I just don't like him kicking him after he's down. That's
Okay,
honestly,
kicking
like,
him-
My,
kicking his
my
corpse.
issue with it, yeah.
Well, also, Joe, what I think would have been cool is, the monsters are smart enough to immediately post killing Ghidorah to destroy the Kalak base, which just as a side effect of the battle, they like break down a mountain and the Kalak base happens to be in that mountain. So Godzilla, that's where it's stated explicitly in the dialogue of the film. The monsters know inherently who the bad guys are. So Godzilla destroys the Kalak base. We got to mention why they're now not under control of the Kalaks. It's because of that whole tension scene. That was so tensionless.
The laser scene.
Yeah, them destroying that ultimate controller for the monsters, because prior to that they had small controllers for the monsters all over the earth, just radio controlling them.
Do you prefer this? This is totally different. Do you prefer this Ghidorah design to the last one, or which one do you? Which
Again,
Ghidorah design?
it's less detailed. I want to say
detailed?
the original for sure,
You
because he
prefer
has
the
so
original.
much detail in his face. I can't remember what it was, but they did something,
There's something
in
about
the
the
original.
golden color of this one that I kind of dig, like just the way he's painted. I think.
Well, I think also they show him off more, like his entrance. They're showing him from the back, his like wings flapping, and he's flying over the monsters or at them, and it's cool. They show him off more, but something with the design, it's just not as detailed as the others, and I can't remember what it is. I think it's something with his face that. It might have been whiskers. They didn't end up using in future designs, but they used in the original Ghidorah, showing him in the original movie, because it just wobbled way too much with those heads. Because like originally, you don't know how that's going to show up on film. The heads flail everywhere. I don't know though. I think it works.
What doesn't work is this ending fight. After we got the big fight, then suddenly we need the extra little annoying fight,
Yeah.
which they did in freaking Frankenstein Conquers the World, and they're doing in this one too.
Yeah, the extended fighting, that's so unnecessary.
So after the giant fight with all the monsters, and they kill King Ghidorah, and they just kind of stand there, suddenly this other thing just comes out of nowhere. This flaming ball of bad special effects comes out of nowhere,
Fire dragon.
and it attacks Rodan, and then the SY, or the S, is it the SY3?
yeah, Moonlight SY3.
The SY3 then gets attacked, and then they go after it, and they find out that it's a flying saucer the whole time, and it's
Just
like, so they like climax switch on us. I don't like it when movies do that.
Yeah, and to their credit, to the filmmakers' credit, I think they're just trying to add even more action. But yeah, we already, as an audience, experienced one climax, a climax which is infinitely superior, as Joe and I have already trashed it, but it's still infinitely superior to
It's way better
a
than this.
UFO versus the SY3.
Oh man.
Great explosions. I gotta give them that when they destroy the spaceship. Kalak UFOs are pretty flimsy. All right. Is there any other facts? Because
Yeah, it didn't do that well financially in comparison to other Godzilla movies, even around the time. So it did slightly better than Son of Godzilla, but it still didn't do that great for as great as they wanted it to be. So it's like the 16th biggest Godzilla film in terms of ticket sales.
the figures were, I don't know, ticket sales. So Destroy All Monsters continued to the decline in ticket sales in Japan for the Godzilla series, earning 2.6 million in ticket sales. In comparison, Monster Zero brought in 3.8 million, 1.2 more than Destroy All Monsters, and Son of Godzilla collected 2.5 million, only 0.1 million less, 100,000 less than this movie.
Yeah, so
When it's so close to Son of Godzilla, that is a bad sign.
when it's such a big movie too, like
It was supposed to be huge.
yeah, it was so supposed to be huge. So I'm sure it was disappointing that it didn't do like it did slightly better than Son of Godzilla,
like
but,
a percentage better.
but like that's kind of middling and sad.
Yeah, I mean, early on reading, they kept being called a failure, and then it's called a moderate success in most things that I was reading. It's so weird to me, Joe, because we're seeing the glamour shots of all the monsters on the island, which, okay, I'm pulling out the kid in me. It's cool. They're all on an island. It's cool. When I overthink it and seeing it as an adult, it's dumb that they're all on one island. But as a kid, the child in me longs to see these monsters on an island, living in peace. It's cool to think that all these monsters are on an island, which ironically is the premise of our next film. But it's got one of those endings that I personally don't prefer, and I think a lot of adult fans of these films are not going to prefer them. It's a happy-go-lucky ending.
Would you recommend this movie?
No.
We're at the end here.
No.
Nope. Okay. I would say it's worth one watch. I do like kind of the faster paced sort of Ishiro Honda thing. A lot of the special effects are really cool.
Yeah.
Even the human violence is kind of nice, although you don't really care much because the characters are flat as hell. But I think it is worth a watch.
I think, like we said with Atragon, for me, I would recommend all you need is to look up the final battle. That's all you need. As we recommended with Atragon, looking up Manda's scenes, of which there are like a sequence and a scene. But yeah, just look up the final battle, and you got what the film is about. You don't need the premise of the story. It's not that good.
Okay. All right.
I want to say it's cool to see Kumonga in the fight at the end, because he's definitely a bad guy. But then, he goes along with our good guys to defeat bad guy Ghidorah. Really quick, Joe, there were supposed to be two other monsters in that fight. The two other monsters would have been, of course, Abira. In early scripts, we had Abira and a monster called Maguma.
Is that from another movie or?
Yeah, Maguma was a lava walrus, dude.
Lava walrus?
So, I'll show you Abira.
I guess we'll watch it another time after we're done with the Showa era.
Yeah, he showed up in the film Gorath from 1962. Sorry, I came away from the mic. But just a throwaway monster to show up for a scene to show off the prowess of some machine. Anyway, but yeah, Abira, and even in early scripts, Gyra, the bad counterpart to the War of the Gargantuans. We have Gyra and then the other monster, I don't know his name. And Gyra was the bad Frankenstein from War of the Gargantuans. And those were supposed to show up in the film. They were replaced with Anguirus, Manila, and Gorosaurus in the final script. So we don't get every monster shown to us thus far from Toho, but we definitely get the vast majority of them, which is the selling point of this film and its strong point.
All right. Well, that's going to be it for us. Is there anything you want to share right now, Drew? I think we should have another episode this month. So as far as giving away a movie, we'll probably do it next time.
Yeah. Joe, we needed to announce what the what our giveaway was, our figure.
Oh, shoot. All right, Drew. We have a new iTunes review from the UK, and we also have to give away our figurine. So there's 3 iTunes reviews in the running, and we have already decided our winner. Go ahead and could you read the UK review for us?
All the iTunes reviews are in the running ones. Every single one that has never won.
Oh, okay.
So,
I thought we had like 3. So
no, we're good.
All right.
Okay, let's read this. A monster of a podcast that's made me a massive monster fan. Before finding this by Winter Turtle 913. Before finding this podcast, I knew very little about Godzilla apart from the 1998 movie. Oh, how sad that is. But now, thanks to Joe and Drew.
Oh, man, that is sad.
I'm a huge fan of the big green lizard. Really? Thank you. Joe and Drew's knowledge of Godzilla, and kaiju in general is second to none, and the commentary they provided for the various films are great and both factual and fun. If it wasn't for this podcast, I'd have missed these great but often cheesy classic Toho movies. A brilliant 5-star podcast and great listen. Long may it continue. We hope to as well. At least a few more years. Oh, and thanks for spurring me on to collect every Godzilla, Toho, kaiju movie. Not an easy task for a bloke in the UK. Yeah.
It's not an easy task anywhere, I'm pretty sure.
And not to get them illegally. Way to go. I want to say, Joe, who wins?
He wins.
He wins our figure. So to Winter Turtle 913, thank you for the review. You win our Mechagodzilla figure. We'll send that to you. Just DM me, bruh. Direct message me on Twitter, and I will send that to you.
Okay, man.
We also have another Patreon donor.
We do. His name is Chris Britt. So he donated. He's donating to us now on Patreon. And if you want to donate to us on Patreon as well, you can go to GodzillaPodcast.com, and there's a Patreon link there, and you can support the show that way. If you don't want to spend specifically any money per month, or if you don't want to use the Patreon, it doesn't matter. There's also a PayPal link there, and you can click through an Amazon link, and it'll help support the show that way every time you buy something off of Amazon. So thank you very much, not only to Chris Britt, but to every single one of our Patreon donors. And we have discussed at length how we're going to do that Riff Tracks thing. And,
yeah, that was our first.
We're working on it.
That was our first reward, overall reward for our Patreon donors. We are going to do something very special for that, so it's going to take a little bit. We're sorry for the delay. We're actually pretty close, Joe, to hitting our reward of having the podcast paid for completely. And
true.
Also,
Zone Fighter. Yeah.
Adding Zone Fighter in commentaries.
So we need about $6 more per episode.
What we have unlocked, though, overall is the DVD a month. So next podcast, because we are going to get one out this month.
We should.
Another
there shouldn't be
commentary,
anything
I believe.
away from us getting a second episode out this month.
And that's another commentary. Next week, we hope to. We will see. We got it scheduled. A podcast, a one-off podcast, a non-commentary,
little mini-sode with a listener,
with Chris Japper. Yeah,
That's
we
right.
appreciate his one-time $10 donation, which entitles him to a discussion with us. It's a non-commentary episode, but we will be discussing monsters in general with him.
Sweet.
And it's going to be awesome because we really want to talk to anybody that's willing to talk to us, and that is not going to be a episode that the Patreon donors will pay for.
Right.
All we're saying, Patreon donors, we are working hard to get at least 2 commentaries out a month. You know, we can do 3 some months. It's about every other week. We're trying to get these out. Sorry that we failed you. Yeah, things have happened.
They know. They've been listening to the show, and it's always been on and off. So.
Yeah. But for our Patreon donors, it's only per episode. It's not per month. We appreciate anything you give us. We're getting to the overall goal. I mean, we've gotten to it, but we're getting the Riff Tracks version of Godzilla Raids Again done. To those who do not know, Riff Tracks is the continuation of Mystery Science Theater 3000, so that will be a funny commentary. Yes. And you'll see how that's going to be incorporated in a possible video in the future.
Possible secret video.
Secret video.
All right, Drew. I think that's going to be it for today.
All right.
My voice is obviously going. Do you hear this? I sound like an old lady right now, like an old smoker.
Then, Joe, let your voice rest.
Son.
I'm quickly going to talk about some news then, just quick.
Okay.
It seems like people have gotten it mixed up, but last podcast, G-Man wrote an article for Sci-Fi Ed, which we cited all of the, and actually I need to read that comment on our on our webpage, GodzillaPodcast.com. But we talked about all the nominations for what equates to the Japanese Academy Awards for Shin Godzilla.
Yeah, the Japan Academy Prize.
Yeah, people mixed up those with what Shin Godzilla has already won. Kinema Junpo, basically the equivalent to Japanese Sight and Sound.
Yeah.
Well, to the American Sight and Sound magazine. Which
Sight and Sound's British magazine.
Oh, gotcha. Sorry,
Yeah,
I thought it was. But a high-end film
There's
magazine.
going to be a British guy out there that's like, what?
Sorry, Joe knew. Now I know. But Kinema Junpo, the Japanese equivalent to that magazine, Shin Godzilla won. It's a picture of the year, and I believe it won a few other things, but I'm not quite sure on that. So people were getting those awards
But it
mixed
hasn't
up.
won Japan Academy Prize.
No,
No,
those take place
award
in
has
March.
not been given out yet.
Yeah, those take place in March.
Yeah.
So, but it has won something from someone. It's cool. The comment given to us by, really quickly, it's a great justification of the nomination for our female lead in Shin Godzilla. Joe and I kind of had some opposition on her nomination for a best female lead.
Well, just because we are American and we can tell when someone else is American or not when they
right.
speak English.
This is Ayame
That's how
Chiba.
you
She
can tell.
won the Atragon DVD. Yes, our Patreon donors can win monster DVDs, and we'll be giving that away, another one this month, as we do
We
monthly.
already said that, Drew.
Thank you, Joe.
It's all right. It's
I'm
all right.
losing my mind.
Yeah, it's all right. We're almost done here.
So here's Ayame's comment. As to Ishihara Satomi, Kyoko Ann Patterson being nominated for the Best Supporting Actress in the 40th Japanese Academy Prize, my spoken English is far better than hers, and she came off sounding quite bad to me.
She sounds unlistenable.
However, English in Japanese public schools is largely taught by non-native speakers using rote memorization. Ishihara-san's English sounds pretty much like you would hear in a typical high school classroom teaching English, so to most Japanese listeners, it would not sound odd at all. As to her performance, and this is where it gets nuanced, she was likely nominated because it was seen as a somewhat dark, comedic performance. She was playing the negative stereotype of Americans, that of a bullying loudmouth who thinks they know what is best for everyone, but at the same time... Shut up, Joe. But at the same time, a loudmouth who really does wish to be helpful and kind. Having her be a woman and Japanese American just made it funnier for many.
Okay.
So, and she
hopes,
says for herself...
the other girl wins, as I do too. There you go.
Exactly. Yeah. What are you going to say?
She just can't speak English. She just can't. Like I've said before, her performance may be quite good on the Japanese end of things, not necessarily for the English, but like the scenes where she has to speak Japanese. And maybe she does have a good performance while she's speaking English as well. But it is as an American, as an English speaker, it is distracting.
Not a good performance, but a funny, overly dramatic, dark stereotype of what...
even then, that's like a performance. If the performance worked, then the performance worked. So,
True.
either that or it's Slim Pickens in the Japanese film year. So it's one of the two, and I assume that maybe her performance is good if in that native language.
From that perspective.
It's from this perspective, it's like impossible.
Ain't good.
Of course, there are sections in that movie where like the English speakers are talking. They're just bad actors. They're just bad. Like the native English speakers in that movie are bad as well. So payback. Or like when the politicians are like looking out a window and talking to each other, just like this doesn't feel right. This scene is off.
That weirdly set up shot of them all looking out of windows at once.
And then they're all talking, and the
This
English
is us just being
dialogue is
nitpicky.
not.
Shin Godzilla is good.
It is good
For the
when
vast
it's
majority.
not in English. It is good. When they're talking and they have these really weird blocky dialogue line that it's just
Not the best English translation.
It's not the best. Luckily, the movie kept going.
Yeah. Last bit of news, not related to that at all, is that it was revealed to us what the name of the cinematic universe for this Kong Skull Island and the future Godzilla films. It's called the Monsterverse. That was shown off the back of these toys that are now appearing on shelves, the Kong Skull Island toys. So it's Monsterverse. We're going to be hearing a lot in the next few years, we hope, about Monsterverse, or perhaps it's the Monsterverse, but that's where Kong's going to appear, this version of Kong that will eventually fight Godzilla. Fingers crossed. That's got to be set in stone at this point. Kong Skull Island needs to do good in theaters. Yeah, that's about it, though. It's coming out in March. Joe, Caleb, and I are planning on viewing the film and doing basically a bonus episode as we did with Shin Godzilla. Not a commentary, but just our thoughts on it.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
yeah. All right.
All right, man. I think that's gonna be it. Thanks to our theme song by
Mecha G.
Mecha G.
Yeah, we haven't shouted out to them in a while, but
Not in
check
a
out their
while.
Bandcamp page.
Yeah, there should be a link on the site. Anyway, we'll see you guys later.
Keep it G.
Get on!